Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. Today, Moira Dingle dies after brain tumor battle Emmerdale. It had been months since Moira Dingle first noticed the headaches. At first, she brushed them off, just stress, she thought, from long days running the farm, dealing with Kane's moods, and trying to keep her fractured family together. But as time went on, the pain grew unbearable, the dizziness more frequent, and her memory began to slip. The once indomitable matriarch of Butler's farm was slowing down, and for Moira, that was a terrifying thought. One crisp Yorkshire morning, after collapsing in the barn, Moira finally agreed to see a doctor. The news hit her like a freight train, a malignant brain tumor, aggressive and advanced. The doctor spoke gently, their words measured, but all Moira could hear was the ticking of time that she suddenly realized was running out. The diagnosis. Kane Dingle wasn't good with emotions. His way of coping had always been to lash out or shut down, but this was different. When Moira sat him down at the farmhouse kitchen table, her hands trembling around a cup of untouched tea, he could see the fear behind her steady eyes. "Kane," she whispered, "I've got a brain tumor. It's bad." For a moment, he didn't react. He just stared at her, the words refusing to sink in. Then he laughed, a cold, disbelieving sound. "Don't be daft. They can fix that sort of thing now, can't they? Surgery or chemo, whatever they do these days." Moira shook her head slowly. "It's too far gone. They said treatment might buy me a little time, but not much." Kane stood abruptly, pushing his chair back with a screech. No. No, you're not saying this. Not you." Moira reached across the table, taking his rough, calloused hand in hers. "I'm saying it because you need to hear it. I've got to start putting things in order." For the first time in years, Kane's eyes filled with tears. He pulled away, storming out into the yard, his anger masking the heartbreak that threatened to break him in two. Telling the family. The hardest part for Moira wasn't facing her own death, it was telling her children. Maddie was devastated, holding her tight as though he could somehow protect her from what was inside her own body. Isaac was too young to understand, though his little face crumpled when he saw everyone crying. "Why's everyone sad?" he asked one evening, climbing onto Moira's lap. She smiled weakly, brushing his hair from his eyes. "Because Mummy's not feeling very well, love. But I'll always be with you, no matter what." She tried to stay strong, but every night, after everyone had gone to bed, Moira would sit by the fire, staring into the flames, wondering how many more nights she had left to see. The decline. Weeks turned into months, and Moira's health deteriorated quickly. The chemotherapy drained her strength, leaving her pale and frail, but she refused to give up the farm. Even when she could barely walk, she insisted on sitting by the window overlooking the fields, watching Kane and Maddie work the land. There were moments of hope, good days when she managed to smile, or when Kane made her laugh with his gruff jokes. But the bad days became more frequent, and soon, the headaches returned with vengeance. One afternoon, she collapsed again, this time in the farmhouse kitchen. Kane carried her to the hospital himself, refusing to wait for an ambulance. The doctors confirmed the worst, the tumor had spread. Kane sat beside her hospital bed, his head in his hands. "I can't do this without you, Moira," he whispered. She opened her eyes weakly, managing a faint smile. "You can. You always could. You just never believed it." A farewell visit. As word spread through the village, old friends came to see her. Chaz brought flowers and sat by her bed, tears streaming silently down her face. Rona came too, trying to stay strong for her friend but breaking down halfway through their conversation. Even Charity Dingle, never one for sentiment, visited late one evening. She stood awkwardly at the door before finally saying, "You've always been tougher than me, Moira. I wish you weren't going through this." Moira gave her a weak smile. "We've had our scraps, haven't we? But you've got a good heart, Charity. Don't ever hide it." The final days. Back home, surrounded by her family, Moira's final days were peaceful. The farmhouse was quiet, filled with the low hum of conversation, the occasional laughter, and the soft sound of wind through the open window. Cain never left her side. He slept in a chair beside the bed, holding her hand through the night. On her last morning, the sunrise poured golden light across the fields. Moira's breathing was shallow, her eyes half open as she gazed out toward the hills she'd called home for so long. Cain leaned close, his voice breaking. "You don't have to fight anymore, Moira. You've done enough." She smiled faintly. "Promise me you'll look after the kids." "I promise." Her hand went still in his, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. The only sound was the wind rustling through the trees outside. Cain sat frozen, unable to move, tears falling freely for the woman who had been his anchor, his enemy, his best friend, and his love. The aftermath. The village was in shock when the news spread. Moira Dingle had died peacefully after her battle with a brain tumor. The woman who had survived affairs, heartbreak, loss, and tragedy had finally been taken by something no one could fight. At her funeral, the church overflowed with mourners. Matty stood at the front, reading a letter his mother had written before her death. "She told me not to cry too much," he said, his voice trembling. "She said she'd had a good life, that she'd loved deeply, worked hard, and raised a family she was proud of. She wanted us to remember her not for how she died, but for how she lived." Cain couldn't speak. He stood silently at the graveside, clutching a single white rose. As the coffin was lowered into the ground, he whispered, "I'll love you always, Moira." A new chapter. In the weeks that followed, Cain tried to keep busy, throwing himself into work. But at night, he'd find himself talking to her, out in the fields, or sitting in her favorite chair. Sometimes, when the wind blew through the farmhouse, he could almost hear her voice, calm, warm, teasing him for being so stubborn. Life in Emmerdale carried on, as it always did, but nothing felt the same. Moira's absence hung heavy over the village. Yet, in a way, her spirit lived on, in the strength of her children, the stubborn resilience of Cain, and the legacy she left behind on the land she loved. Epilogue. Months later, Cain visited her grave alone. He placed a bunch of fresh flowers and sat quietly. "You were right," he said softly. "I'm still standing. But it's not the same." He looked out across the fields, the evening sun setting behind the hills, and for a moment, he smiled. "You'd be proud of them, Moira. Of all of us." As he walked away, the wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of heather and the echo of Moira's laughter through the valley, a reminder that though she was gone, Moira Dingle's spirit would forever be part of Emmerdale.